Again, this Employment Rights Act is also very valuable to the UK. These aren't things that are existent in all countries, and in fact quite the opposite in many countries as well. So we are very lucky to have employment rights. Usually the majority of these are established after 2 years in employment, so an employee has access to employment rights after 2 years in employment. I don't actually know the rationale for that 2 years. I think it's legacy, and I'm wondering if that 2 years will be changed, to be quite honest, in the next few years. I think given that people now have multiple jobs, society's changed, people do chop and change. There's no job for life anymore. People do chop and change between jobs. I'm wondering whether this 2 years will probably be scrapped or certainly shortened. I don't know. So I'd like to make you aware of some key differences between an employee versus a self-employed worker. That does relate directly to employment rights. The idea is that you don't have the same rights or as many rights as an employee as a self-employed worker, and I think that's quite key, because I think you ought to know as a business, if you're engaging with someone as a contractor, you ought to know what you still need to provide and what you don't. This is also a key piece of legislation. So you might have heard of the Deliveroo cases and Uber and Pimlico plumbers, that are all key cases at the moment within this piece of legislation. So key factors. What defines a contractor between somebody who's considered as an employee? Do they have a contract of employment? Now, they may have a contractor's agreement. A contractor's agreement is completely different to a contract of employment. Do they have regular, unvariable hours? So are they told they need to be here from 9 till 5 every day, Monday to Friday, or 9 till 5, you know? Have they got set hours each day? Can another individual turn up in their place? So is it that work just needs doing, and whether it's provided by the specific individual that you've appointed or not? And if it is somebody that you have appointed and you're requiring them to be there on a regular basis, however regular that may be, the notion is generally it would be that they're employed. Do you provide the tools to do the job? So if you're providing a computer, a phone, the desk space, it would, again, that's another factor that will be taken into consideration to define whether somebody's considered or should be an employee versus a contractor. And these, as I say, these are all key things that have been brought into the case of Uber, Deliveroo, and now also Hermes on these sorts of challenges. And I think this is going to be something that's forever becoming an issue as we enter into a more complex society where where the next generation of students of people entering into the world of employment after the millennials are thought to have been to be capable of holding up several jobs with several different employers. Will we be in a position where they're all contractors? Will companies need to become ever more aware of their guidelines and aware of the governance around contractors versus employees? So I think there's a lot more where this came from, to be honest. There's now a notion that you can go out and get a job and never have to have an interview or never have to meet your employer. You can just engage with them and say, yeah, I'll provide that work for you, such as Uber and Deliveroo thought that they were doing. So we are living in a society where self-employed workers are becoming more of a regular thing, and for convenience as well. So I think this is going to be a big one really over the next several years. It does make employment rights and legislation a bit more complicated. It means that employment lawyers spend a lot of time on picking all the different twists and turns of the relationship held between a contractor and an employer.